Good day, everyone. Today, our topic is about homeostasis. Yes, this word looks very new to us. It simply means how to maintain your inner environment, how to keep things within a certain range, within a certain limit within our bodies. In some textbooks, it is actually considered as one of the characteristics of living things. All living things have this ability of keeping certain aspects within a certain range. Let's begin. Homeostasis, let's memorize this definition. Homeostasis means maintaining a constant internal environment. So we want to keep things internally within a certain range, maintained. You can change this word instead of using maintain, you can say keeping it constant, same meaning. Now, what examples of homeostasis comes up to mind? Yes, temperature. As you enter any facility now, people might be asked to quickly be checked for their temperature. So keeping the temperature constant is very important. We also want to keep, you guessed it right, the amount of carbon dioxide in the body should be kept fairly constant. So carbon dioxide dissolves in water, giving us carbonic acid that is acidic, of course. So the more carbon dioxide we have in our blood, the more acidic it becomes. So maybe your body would like to, yes, it actually does, keep the pH of the blood constant. You also guessed this one right. Glucose should be kept within a certain range. Even after a meal, when your body breaks down the starch and we have glucose, the body should adjust how much sugar there is in the blood. If you have been fasting for a long time, no food, your glucose level must be low, so your body adjusts that, or else a person feels dizzy and might faint. Also, another good example is water and salt content of the blood. If we have too many salts, the blood gets rid of the extra. If we have too much or too little of water, the body will adjust that too. Now, why is that important? Why should we keep certain factors constant? Give you some time to think. Maybe you want to check why the temperature is important. What is affected by temperature in our cells? Enzymes, you're right. Temperature and pH will affect how enzymes work. Enzymes have a certain temperature at which they work best. We call it the optimum temperature, the same as with pH. There is an optimum pH for enzymes, so we need to keep these constant so our enzymes work effectively. Well, water and salts are important to be kept within a certain range because this affects the osmotic properties of our body fluids. Remember, water injected into blood stream, if it's pure water, the cells will take in water by osmosis. Red blood cells might inflate and then eventually burst, and that's a very dangerous thing to do. That's why all medicines that are injected into the body have to have the same osmotic pressure or the same concentration as that found in the blood. Now we're talking about our skin, the largest organ covering all of our body. And what structures does it have to maintain temperature, of course? We'll take each part and discuss it in detail. First of all, our skin has hairs. These hairs are associated with some other parts, such as the oil gland that produces oil that goes to the surface of the skin, keeping the skin smooth and supple so that it doesn't crack easily, so that bacteria and microorganisms are unable to attack the skin through these damaged part of the skin. So it has to be always smooth and supple to stay healthy. Also, the oil gland adjusts the pH of the skin so that only certain microorganisms that are considered unharmful are allowed to stay on the skin. The hair muscle, it helps to control the hair. It either contracts so the hairs stand upright, like when you have goosebumps. If you feel cold, your hair muscle, we call it the hair erector muscle, that helps to keep these hairs erect or standing upright. The hair muscle contracts and the hairs stand, as we can see over here in that photo. What does that, how is that good for us? You might ask. Well, hairs standing this way will trap a layer of air around the skin. Air is a very poor conductor of heat, or in another way, we can say it is a good insulator of heat. So this traps heat around the body when you feel cold, and this might help the person to feel warmer. It's the opposite when a person feels hot. The hair muscles relax and the hairs lie flat on the surface of the skin, so less air is trapped between the body and the surroundings, so heat is allowed to be lost easily. Also, in our skin, we have sweat glands. We know those. They produce sweat, and the sweat is water and some salts with it, travels up this sweat pore to reach the surface of the skin. As the water evaporates, it uses the body heat to change from liquid to gas, and this removes some of the heat from our body, thus cooling it down. What else do we have? Well, we have blood vessels near the surface of the skin that branch into blood capillaries. And these blood vessels have the ability to change their diameter. All our blood vessels have this ability because we have smooth muscles, especially in arteries. We have a lot of those that control how much blood flows through these vessels. So if a blood vessel, such as here, we have at the far left side a blood vessel that has a normal size. If it becomes constricted, if the blood vessel constricts, it means that it becomes narrower. Narrower, therefore, control how much heat can move or can radiate. Heat is lost to the surroundings by radiation from these blood vessels that are near the surface of the skin. So the more blood running through these blood vessels, then more heat is lost. That is what happens with vasodilation. And if we want to do the opposite, we want to keep the heat in, then your blood vessels constrict. We call this vasoconstriction. We also have nerve endings. These are receptors that detect two things. We have receptors that detect heat, we have receptors that detect pressure. So these also help our skin to act as a sensory organ. Finally, we have a fat layer. This fat layer, the thicker it is, then more heat is trapped inside the body because fat is a good insulator. So as an organism builds up more fat under his skin, then he won't feel cold, or he will survive the cold. Let's move on. Here we're going to summarize what your body does to help control its temperature. What if your body temperature is too high? You feel hot. What would your body do to lower the body temperature? So maybe you're exercising, maybe you're in a summer in the sun. What would your body do to help reduce the temperature and bring it back to normal? We said blood vessels in the skin dilate, they become wider. This increases blood flow near the surface of the skin. This increases heat loss to the surroundings by radiation. Yes, your face looks red when you're hot, right? And your hair muscles relax, so the hairs lie down on the surface of the skin. This traps less air around the body, so heat is allowed to travel or leave the body. Sweat glands secrete more sweat. This is a tricky part because people think that we don't sweat in winter or when it's cold. We actually sweat all the time. What's different is that we sweat more when it's hotter and we sweat less when it's cooler. So don't say sweat glands secrete sweat or sweat is produced. No, more sweat is produced or the sweat glands secrete more sweat. All right, we like to be very accurate when we describe stuff, don't we? Okay, so we produce more sweat that travels to the surface of the skin, and as it evaporates, it takes away some of the heat to evaporate, and this cools down our body temperature. Now, what does our body do to raise the body temperature? So you feel cold. What does your body do to maintain the temperature and bring it up? We'll say the opposite of whatever we have just said on the right, on the left hand side. So blood vessels in the skin constrict. Constrict means they become narrower. So there is less space inside this blood vessel, so less blood is flowing inside of it. This decreases the heat that is lost by radiation. And yes, we don't look very red in winter. Your skin looks a little bit pale, doesn't it? Hair muscles, on the other hand, they contract. Hairs stand upright, so more air is trapped around the body, acting as an insulator. The more hairs we have, the more efficient this will be. Maybe our ancestors had more hairs before the invention of clothes? Maybe yes. Sweat glands secrete less sweat, and therefore less heat is lost as it evaporates. Now, there are other things that we have never discussed yet. You, in the cold, if it's too cold and you're not wearing enough clothing, you will shiver. Muscles will shiver. And this contraction and relaxation, quick contraction and relaxation, will produce produce heat. And this heat will warm you up. So shivering means the body is trying to heat your body up. So you should not wait. You should look for a warm place to sit in or add more clothes to your body. Also, chemical reactions in the liver increase to generate more heat. So, as the chemical reactions happen, heat is generated and the blood traveling through the liver is warmed up. And as the blood travels around the body, it warms us up. Now, here I want to make sure that we know what we're writing. If the question says, how does your skin control the body temperature or maintain the body temperature? If we're talking only about skin, then we're going to mention these 3 points. Skin helps to raise or lower body temperature by these 3 first points. If the question asks you to describe how the body reacts or how the body helps to raise the body temperature, then you can mention all 5. Doesn't matter. So we want to be very careful while reading the question. Making sure that we read the question carefully helps us to attain all the marks. Let's move on. Now here we're going to start a new point that is very related to our topic. When we talk about the surface area of an organism, we always associate it with volume or compare it to the volume of that organism, because it differs. As the organism increases in size, the surface area to volume ratio changes, and we want to see how it changes. Here we're going to use a model. This is a cube. We're going to call it cube A, that has the length, width, and height of 1 centimeter. This other cube, cube B, has the length, width, and height of 10 centimeters. So they have the same shape. Do they have the same surface area? Of course not. Do they have the same volume? Also, it's different. Do they have the same surface area to volume ratio? Let's find out. Let's calculate the volume of cube A. It is the length times width times height, so the volume is 1 centimeter cubed. That one was easy. Now let's calculate the volume of cube B. Cube B has 10 centimeters on each side, so we'll multiply the length, width, and height. We get 10 times 10 times 10. So we have 100 centimeters cubed. Let's calculate the surface area of cube A. Cube A has 6 sides. Each side is 1 centimeter squared because we multiply the length and width to get the surface area of one side, and this cube has 6 of them. So this surface area is 6 centimeters squared. The surface area of cube B, well, it's the same. We're going to multiply the length and the width to get the surface area of one side, and then multiply that by 6. So the surface area is 6 times 100 centimeters squared. So we have a surface area of 600 centimeters squared. Now let's get the ratio. Surface area is 6 to 1 for cube A. We have surface area is 6 centimeters squared, the volume is 1 centimeter cubed, so the ratio is 6 to 1. What about the other cube, cube B? Ratio is 600 to 1000. If you want to simplify this ratio and make it something to 1, like the first cube, cube A, we'll divide both sides by 1000, so we get a final answer of 0.6 to 1. So the surface area of surface area to volume ratio of cube B is much smaller, actually 10 times smaller than the ratio of cube A. So what does that tell us? Let's see this, or let's apply this. How does surface area to volume ratio affect an organism? Here we have organisms that are adults and young ones, and they have the same body shape. All the difference is their size. So which will lose more heat to the surroundings? If we only think about surface area, you would say, oh yes, of course, the big ones, they have a bigger surface area, so they will lose more heat. We don't think that way. When we talk about an object, not only organisms, any object, if you want to compare objects that are losing heat or gaining heat from their surroundings, we don't consider only the surface area, we consider the volume as well. So we use the surface area to volume ratio. All right? So remember the two cubes, which has a greater surface area to volume ratio? The smaller one. So smaller animals will lose more heat to the surroundings. They will feel colder much faster than their adult parents. Okay, so yes, that's why you might see your parent asking you to wear more clothes because they're worried you will feel cold. Unlike them, they have a different surface area to volume ratio. So which loses more heat, small or large animals? The smaller ones, because they have a larger surface area to volume ratio. So what do animals do, the small animals do, to keep their warmth? You can see these lovely kittens. What are they doing? They're curling and cuddling. They curl up to reduce the surface area. And this is exactly what we do in winter. We put our hands close to our bodies, our legs the same thing, we cuddle or next to our brothers or sisters or family members because we want to keep our warmth. So they cuddle and they curl up. Also, smaller organisms, they have a different metabolic rate. The chemical reactions in their bodies are much faster to release more heat. So this helps them to stay warm. That's why they're also very hungry all the time. Yes, you're hungry all the time. One part of it because you're growing and you need these nutrients to grow, but some of it is because you want to keep your body temperature, especially in winter, at a constant temperature. Let's move on. What do large animals do to keep their cool? It's the opposite problem for larger animals. They feel hot and they want to reduce their body temperature easily. Here we have elephants. Elephants have thicker skin all around their body, and it's very difficult for them to lose heat throughout their skin. Fortunately, they have big ears, and these ears have thinner skin. Blood vessels running inside their ears will help to lose this heat to the surroundings. Now, why do elephants, Ms. Ruba? Well, here I have a question for you. Which of these is an African elephant and which is an Indian elephant? Those who know about temperatures and maybe the geography of that place, Africa is a hotter place, and this animal lives in a place maybe is the savanna area where there are grasses of savanna, but very little trees to keep these animals cool. They're in the sun all the time. How can they keep their cool? So, did you notice how they have evolved? They have evolved with bigger ears than the Indian ones. The Indian elephant lives in a dense forest where there's shade all the time, so that heat is the sun is not causing them to feel as hot. So they have smaller ears. Did you notice? Animals evolve to adapt to their environment. So the African elephant has bigger ears to lose more heat because it feels hotter. Hippopotamus is another animal that lives in the water. So living in the water most of the time helps them to cool their bodies. So elephants have large ears where there are blood vessels. Flapping their ears will help them to lose heat to the surroundings, and they might have frequent baths, such as the hippopotamus. Also, these bigger animals have very little fur on their body because they want to lose heat to the surroundings. They don't want to keep that temperature in. So these are the three adaptations that we have here. Now this concludes the part about homeostasis. The next part of our slide is about excretion. And excretion actually is a way of also maintaining different things. So let's move to excretion. So what is excretion? Do you remember? We took it at the beginning of this course when we took the 7 characteristics of living things. It is the removal of some chemicals or some substances that are harmful to the body or maybe in excess. Remember the definition? Excretion is 3 things: removal of metabolic wastes, the removal of toxins, and substances that are in excess of requirement. We are all actually excreting this moment. As you're listening to this video, you are. How do I know? Well, I'm assuming you're alive. And if you're alive, you should be breathing in and out. And if we're breathing, we're releasing or getting rid of carbon dioxide in exhaled air. So the lungs are actually excretory organs. They excrete carbon dioxide into the air. What else acts as an excretory organ? We just spoke about the skin and how it gets rid of sweat. So removing this excess water, salts, and some urea actually is also found in sweat. The skin is also another excretory organ. So this is how we get rid of some of the water and salts, and some of the urea as well. Finally, well, the most obvious one is the last one, isn't it? Your kidney removes urea, excess water, and excess salts. Some hormones that have finished their job, so we call them spent hormones, and some drugs as well, some medicines are excreted by the kidney into the urine. Let's move on. So we were just talking about how the kidney gets rid of urine, where the major constituent of urine is water and urea is dissolved in it. What is urea? Where does it come from? Well, urea is actually the product of excess amino acids. We don't have the ability to store amino acids that are in excess. You have to get amino acids for your body every day. So that's why eating protein is important. But what do we do with this excess amino acids? Do they we do we get rid of them? Well, your body is actually a well-engineered body. Instead of throwing the whole molecule of amino acid away, the molecule, we remove the nitrogen part of it. This nitrogen part is called an amine group. Let's look at the basic structure of amino acids. The basic structure of an amino acid is a molecule that has on one side C double bond O, OH, which we call carboxylic acid. On the other side, we have NH2, which we call an amine group. Hence the name. Amino is the amine group part of the name, and acid is the carboxylic acid part of the name. That's why all amino acids are called that, because they all have an amine group on one end and a carboxylic acid at one end. And if we remove the amine group, if we are able to remove, and that is actually what our liver does, it removes the amine group. We call this process deamination. This part is not useful. We'll get rid of it, but getting rid of amine group will produce ammonia. Ammonia is, well, those of you who have studied chemistry know, it is a very alkaline chemical, ammonia. So if we allow it to flow in blood, it will change our pH, blood pH drastically. This will be very dangerous for the human. So another way of getting rid of this amine group is to attach it to the carbon atom we have in the diagram at the bottom. This carbon atom has two amine groups and a double bond to O. Actually, this is the urea molecule. And the urea molecule is made in the liver by deamination of excess amino acids. What do we do with the remainder of the molecule? Well, it contains carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Similar to what would you think? Carbohydrates, of course, and fats. This remainder of the molecule can be used to release energy, just as in respiration of glucose and respiration of fats. All right, so it's a good way to get energy. So you can get, instead of throwing the whole molecule, well, we'll keep the good part of it, which can be used to release energy. The urea travels with the blood from the liver to through the hepatic vein. If you remember, this blood vessel that comes out of the liver is called the hepatic vein, and it travels with the blood until it reaches the kidney. Here it is in the kidney, it will be excreted. Sometimes we refer to the urea molecule as the nitrogenous waste compound. So sometimes we like to trick you with our questions. So if you see urea or see nitrogenous waste compound, we're talking about the same thing. Okay? Here, the diagram of the excretory system. We need to know the different parts that make up our excretory system. Let's follow the blood flow. So the blood comes from a blood vessel that came out from the heart, and blood was pumped out from the heart to reach all organs. Which blood vessel is that? The blood vessel where we have an arrow going down, blood coming down from the heart. This is our largest blood vessel. It is the aorta. Yes, it goes down till here. And branching out of it to the right side and to the left side, we have renal arteries. The word renal will be used with everything that is associated with the kidney. So the renal artery brings blood to the kidney. The blood is filled with water and salts, excess salts and urea and all of these things that we need to get rid of. Coming out of the kidney is a renal vein. The blood now was filtered and now it has a better concentration of water, salts, much less urea. All right, and it travels up this large blood vessel that will take the blood to the heart. Do you remember its name? It's the vena cava. Yes, this is the vena cava. So Now there's a third tube, if you look at the kidney, that goes downwards. These are the ureters. They carry the urine to the bladder where it stores the urine. So you can wait between visiting the toilet hours and hours according to the size of the bladder and how much liquid it contains. And the urine is kept in place by a ring of muscles that is contracted unless you go to the bathroom, relax this muscle, and urine flows out through the smaller tube we call the urethra. Here I want to make sure that you know when we correct questions where you want to use the words urethra or ureter or urine or urea. These four words are very close to one another in spelling. They have the same U, an R, an N, or E. So you have to be very careful while spelling these words, because if you forget one letter or add a letter or mix up the letters, the person correcting your examiner will be unable to tell which word do you mean. So please make sure that you don't mix up these words: urea, urine, ureter, and urethra. Make sure you spell them correctly, okay? Finally, here we're going to talk about the normal constituents of urine. So what should we normally find in a sample of urine? A sample from a healthy person. Urine has mostly water. Sometimes people get confused and think that when I ask, or if a question says, what is the main constituent of urine? They would say urea. It's not correct. The main constituent of urine is water. In it, we have dissolved urea, some salts are dissolved, some spent hormones. If a person has been drinking, then alcohol will be found in the urine. And if the person has been taking medicines, the drug will be also found in the urine. But what would you consider unhealthy? What chemical would you find in the urine and say, oh, that's a problem? That tells us that the person has a problem. Proteins are large molecules. They should not be able to pass through the capillaries when the blood is filtered. If they are found in urine, then this person has a kidney disease or maybe even a kidney failure. So this person has to check the reason why they have proteins in their blood, in their urine, I mean. One other thing that should not be found in the urine is glucose. Glucose should be reabsorbed or not allowed to reach the urine. It will be fully reabsorbed. So if we find it in urine, this is an indication that this person is diabetic. He has diabetes, where the sugar concentration is higher than normal, much higher than a normal person. So the kidney allows some of the glucose to be released or get rid through urine. Now we finished this presentation. I hope you understood everything and you are able now to answer questions. Have a lovely time. See you later.